Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And I did that in the wrong order. I just realized. But no matter, we are back with a new episode of Social Confoes. Welcome back. Jean Luc, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How do you like my new setup for today? It's
I
very
like the
artsy.
art in the background.
Yeah. So quickly before we go into what we're going to talk about today, the art right here is by the late Erwin de Vries, and this
Hmm,
was actually a gift from Erwin de Vries to my mother.
that's
I
cool.
actually
That's
think
cool.
both of
Both
those
both of them?
paintings,
Yeah, because I
yeah,
was
both
just
of those
about to
paintings,
say.
and that one is Erwin de Vries as well, the one on the top, but you can't see
I,
that one,
I
and this one is a Rudy Patrão. So these are really popular artists in Suriname, and yeah,
as is your
uh,
mother. All right.
this is my mother. So these are really the ones that you see on that side are really like personal gifts from Erin de Vries, which is pretty cool.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Mm.
But before we dive into the episode, of course, like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, youtube.com at Confoes. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at confoes.substack.com. That's confoes.substack.com for direct mailbox engagement and news. With that being said, Shanluk, what are we doing
Yes.
today?
So, welcome to a brand new edition of Social Confoes. It's episode 140. That's a pretty big milestone. And today we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions. And you might think, like, New Year's resolutions, isn't it already the end of January? But we want to make this an episode that wherever you are in the year, you can go back to this episode and reflect a little bit on things. Because yes, New Year's resolutions often means starting January 1st, but New Year's resolution also means by the 1st of February, you've forgotten about those New Year's resolutions. So let's just start off with what are traditions for you in making New Year's resolutions? Do you have New Year's resolutions traditions?
Traditionally, no, but I do want to highlight some common ones big that you hear a lot
Okay,
from people.
go
So
ahead.
let,
Go
let's
ahead.
let's maybe start with that. You know, oftentimes you go online, you look on social media, you talk to friends, they talk about, yeah, I'm gonna lose weight this year. Yeah, I'm gonna start that hobby. Yeah, I'm gonna whatever it is. I have a goal. Not even February. We're talking. It's the end of January. Usually by the end of the first week, like maybe 60 to 80% of people already drop off that healthy light lifestyle or whatever it is. And you ask yourself, what's the psychology behind people using that specific new year, like it's a new day or just a digit in the calendar changes, what's the psychological effect that people like in mass kind of say, this is the time I'm going to change something drastically in my life.
It's the
And
calendar year, basically, right? I think
yeah,
that's the main thing.
and I think one of the biggest, pitfalls that people fall into with this is they make too big of a step because it's a drastic change. Like you change from 2023 one digit to 2024, it's a small change
New
and
year,
people
new
think
me.
new year, new me. I'm gonna lose 10 kilograms. I'm gonna run a 10-kilometer marathon. But there is no specificity in this resolution. There is no plan in it, and that's where people often fall flat. And also, there's no accountability usually. Like, what's the punishment? What's the penalty if you fail the goal? And usually just people sharing this on social media for the clout maybe or for the engagement farming. I think
It
that's
was
what's
there
going
before
on.
social media, so
It was,
I
it
wouldn't say
was,
it was
but
a cloud.
still with social media, it has become more public. And I do think, especially around this time, for a lot of quote unquote influencers, it's been a way to engage form for engagement or you know um, kind of play into the psychology of people. But coming back to your original question, traditional New Year's resolution, I haven't had that in years now. I think we've talked about it in the
Yeah.
trend of this episode, the two previous episodes, kind of building on to this episode where we focus specifically on it. But it's at the end of the day, it's a goal that you set for it. It's just a different naming convention because it starts at the new year.
Okay, but you talked about accountability. Accountability comes from yourself, right?
Yes and no. There's two ways how I perceive accountability. You have accountability towards yourself, yes, but I think what works even better, I've noticed, is having an accountability partner or something that you see every day. And if you do it with yourself, the Atomic Habits book has an amazing like formula for this to write a contract with yourself. If you don't have want to share it with someone else, like and you want to keep yourself accountable,
Yeah.
literally write a contract with yourself and put in a penalty. Put in a penalty and put it somewhere that you can see it. So that's where if you want to keep it to
So
yourself.
give us
But
an example, like for people tuning in, give us an example how that contract and penalty would work. Let's start with eating healthy, for example. Like how do you quantify eating healthy, and then how do you put it into a contract, and how do you um, yeah, create a penalty?
I'd say, okay, let's go eating healthy.
Yeah.
What let's break this down. What's eating healthy? Eating healthy is at least 3 times or 4 times a week,
Y-
low fat
Yeah.
or help me out here with a framing for healthy food.
Well, let's say at least one piece of fruit, at least vegetables on each plate that you consume. Like that's already something that's considered healthy. Healthy could also be like less visits to fast food chains, anything
Okay,
where the
yeah,
preparation is with a
that's a
lot
good
of,
one.
yeah,
You could also put in an award, like, once in a month you could cheat on, or you go to an exclusive
yeah,
lunch or dinner that's maybe $50 to $100.
yeah.
But the penalty is if you go to a fast food place more than 2 times in that month, the penalty is you need to pay your brother or your mother or some stranger, give to charity or do a donation to charity of
Oh yeah, but then
a
at a
hundred
point you're just
dollars.
gonna give the donation and you're gonna get used to the donation. And you're just gonna use it as an excuse. I'm talking
Well,
here from the
of
excuses
course, the
perspective, of course.
penalty should be
Yeah,
something that kind of hurts you. So if at the end, if you notice, after a few times you donate to a good cause, hey,
yeah,
it's a good cause. But
yeah,
if it doesn't phase you anymore, then maybe you
yeah,
need to revise the penalty. But usually, if you write it down in a contract like that, and have someone else review it, maybe it does help to keep you accountable.
okay,
So
so
that's a model I've picked up from Atomic Habits by
yeah.
James Clear, and I've been following James Clear for like a couple of years now. It's one of
Oh, oh,
the
oh,
books uh, I've kind of reread. I think I read it 3 times now. I haven't done it yet for this year, but every 1 or 2 years I reread it just to get back into the flow or get a refresher. So that's
okay,
my usually also number one recommendation. I saw someone on Instagram asking for book recommendations today, and I posted it like Atomic Habits.
yeah.
So that's one way. What are your ways to kind of
No, so I
approach
think
accountability?
I like the accountability part. I like the idea that you did things together. And but I think it's more important for me to make a resolution about something you truly care about. Like often we set these resolutions that either we think we find them important or somebody else finds them important and you feel pressured into, yeah, that's something I need to do as well. But start off with focusing on the resolutions that you really care about, like that are really a priority to you.
S- So here's my question to you.
Yeah.
Usually people don't know what they want. People don't know what they care about. And finding something that you care about is often the challenge in itself. So, what are your recommendations, tips? You wrote a blog post of finding your, you talk a lot about it, ikigai purpose,
Yeah.
and linking that to a resolution that you can truly care about and kind of concrete it, make it more concrete into a goal for the new
Okay.
year.
So let's take healthy lifestyle. Like, what is it really about? Is it really about me losing 5 kilos? Like losing 10 pounds? Is that my goal? If I lose 10 pounds, there's no real, yeah, that's not really a goal for me, right?
So, what would
That's
a
not really.
better,
So if you talk about eating healthy, um, why am I really doing? What is it about? It's like there's no gratification for me in changing up my diet. There's no gratification for me to work out daily. Actually, it hinders a lot of things that I want to achieve. But why is it for me so important that I want to be healthy? Is that I know as time progresses and I get older, it's really hard to get rid of bad habits. So I want to be sure that my lifestyle in general allows me to be healthy at age 50. I want a lifestyle where at age 50, I want to be able to at least compete with my son in any sport of his choosing, whether it's football, basketball, tennis, golf, volleyball, any sport whatsoever. Probably not swimming. That would be the only one that I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm not gonna compete against you. But I want to be able to compete with my son in any sport in his teenage years.
so what I'm
Like be
hearing
part of
there
it.
is basically be having that competitiveness with your son is
Yes.
the important
To
part. It's
to have him as a motivation, like,
yeah.
oh wow, my dad could do this at age 50. I want to be an athlete. I don't want him to be a professional sports uh, kind of athlete. It's not necessary. If he has the talent, yes. If he doesn't have the talent, it's totally fine. But I at least want him to experience what I've experienced in my youth. So for me, the healthy lifestyle is like, in that sense, I've been extremely unhealthy because for the last decade, I haven't played sports. And we're talking 10 years here, like, and any sports. And that comes from somebody who, in his teenage years, was playing sports 6, 7 times a week. And in his student life, was playing sports at least 3 to 5 times a week. And when I started working, it completely left. And then when I started getting children, was completely gone as well. So, and then you get to the why do you like to do sport? So one of the things that I've tried in past years was go running once a week. Huh, okay. Um, Even up until this year, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna run the 5 kilometer at Biki Brochiwaka, and I'm gonna run the 5 kilometer at the Telesur at Snello.
So
So I was
when you
thinking,
put in that resolution,
yeah,
go running
yeah,
once a week,
yeah,
what was that it, or did you add more specificity to it? Did
yeah.
you add
So
any
it was
accountability to it?
yeah,
Did
there
you
was
add
accountability, but the accountability partners weren't really, they weren't pushing me. So it was more that we were doing it as a group effort, but not necessarily towards pushing each other to gain a better time or anything like that. So even if we went, it was just okay, we're gonna run and then we're gonna see what pace. But there was no one pushes each other like, hey, we have to go faster. And it was very inconsistent. And then the second thing was the diet, which really becomes boring at some point if it's just the diet alone. But I think that went best. But still, even there, at a certain point, you're like, okay, but this is not gonna cut it. This, I'm not gonna deprive myself of not eating nice food if there's no result attached to it. If there's a result attached to it, but there has to be like a short-term goal as well. And short-term doesn't have to be like in 3 weeks, but definitely in 3 months. There has to be like some kind of improvement. And it wasn't coming from the diet alone. And then the third thing was like daily exercise, like just getting your daily exercise in and doing jump rope every day and doing push ups and taking half an hour at home to like and you see all these Instagram programs like, if you do calisthenics for a month, this is what happened to you. Great, right? But I was
You
never
know,
into sports because I was into strength. I was more speed, agility, and yeah, sheer willpower and enthusiasm, basically. So I was never a power player in any sports, and but I was an athlete. And what I realized in the beginning of the year, and I have to give a shout out to Rajiv from, um, sorry, I want to give a shout out to Rajiv because we
which
had a
Rajiv?
conversation
We
from
know a few
Warrior
Rajiv.
Fit Movement, Warrior Fit
Warrior Pit.
Movement.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because he approached me as well. So he approached me saying like, "Hey, Warrior Fit Movement has this program, and I want you to join." And that kind of woke me up. And I called him. I was like, "Hey, I actually want to do this, the commitment, but are you okay with it doing it differently?" Because it was going to do 2 times a week. And I had already, the biggest problem, there were two problems. One was I had already blocked the Monday. And Monday is kind of like the family day. So it was really hard for me to let go of the Monday. And uh, so now I'm doing Sunday, Wednesday instead of Monday, Wednesday. And another thing that played a role was like, I looked at the exercise and like, this is going to be the same thing. Um, I'm going to be, I'm going to do exercise, but I'm not going to enjoy it as much as being on a court or in an arena or anything on a field. So, and then my cousin approached me, and he was like, "Hey, we're gonna play volleyball, and we're playing volleyball on a Wednesday." And I played volleyball for years, and I think from all the sports, skills wise, that was the sport that I invested the most in. And so now every Wednesday I go to the training. I refuse to play competitively because I'm too scared that I will go all out and I will get injured and it will impact my work life. But at least the joy is back. The weekly improvement, like every week, see, even if it's been a couple of weeks only, you can see the improvement. Like the skills are slowly coming back, the court vision is slowly coming back. Like things that you were doing 10 years ago, you can still see that they're there. They just have to be a little bit, you have to have some repetition to get back to it. But it brings so much more enjoyment, and also the group that you're doing it with, which is the accountability part as well. It's also grouped with almost all of them are parents, are dads with young children. So there's a relatability there. They're also not at their peak of their career at the moment, but there is some. Most of them played. I think all of them, except a couple, maybe played on the highest level in Suriname as well. So there is this drive to compete and compete as into like, hey, I belong on this level. I belong in this group. So that's a very positive. And then on the Sunday, I actually had to get a trainer in. So I'm on the tennis court now once a week as well. And there's where I do have to get a trainer in. And the trainer is for now my accountability partner until we get to a point that I'm able to confident enough to play against other people again. Because I'm learning from scratch. I'm going a little bit deeper now. I'm actually going into learning techniques that I used to do as a teenager instead of just getting the ball across the court. So I think that's basically for me, and that's the message that I want to give to people is like, look into yourself. Like, if you're gonna do something as a New Year's resolution, don't go completely new. Go into something that you're familiar with and you've had positive experiences with, which will make it easier to transition. So if there's something related to it, that's when it's worth it, because going to be happier, you're going to be more excited. Whereas if it's something that's too far from your core, it's going to be difficult.
So not something new. And would you suggest, or in your approach, because you named a few things,
Mhm.
It's sports, but you approach it in two different ways, one with a volleyball, one with a trainer. Should people set a limit? Like what's a comfortable limit? Would you say two resolutions, 10 resolutions before people fall off or kind of overwhelm themselves and it's kind
Oh,
of
I
a
don't know
waste of
what
a
it
time.
is because I have 10 each year. I maybe have 40 each year. I have like 40 resolutions this year, but they're all directly related to something that I've been doing for the past 10 years. So probably, and that's the thing I enjoy, like those Wednesdays and Sundays. I enjoy them. There's like not a single bone in my body is like, I have to get back on that court. I don't wanna. I don't wanna. So that makes it completely different. So I think that's more important, like how many there are. Of course, you're gonna burn out if you do too many. You're
Yeah.
not gonna be able to keep it up. And you're also gonna notice that the New Year's resolutions that you're least fond of or most far away from where your core or your personality is, those will be the first one to fade, man.
And to
Definitely.
dissect the resolution, does a resolution necessarily have to be something of change or improvement? But because you mentioned you have a list of 40 and it's things you
Yeah.
already do enjoy, so it automatically aligns. But usually, when people set a goal or a resolution, it's because they don't do something yet or they want to improve on it.
Yeah.
So, what's because to me, that psychology seems because it is something not within their current routine, not within their current kind of phase of life or whatever, that's why it becomes a resolution because it's a goal to strive to, and it's kind of something that's more far-fetched, whereas you say try to reel it in and make it close as possible to what
Yeah.
you're doing.
There has to be a link. Like the only reason why you wouldn't have a link is if you want to make a complete career change. But even if you want to make a complete career change, you want to make a career change in something you're good at. You don't want to only like it. You want to be good at it as well, right? And that's something that it always baffles me. Like when people see others make a career change and it's successful, it's not just sheer will and hard work. It is that, but it's also because it's something that really resonates with them, and there probably are skills that they already have that they can use to execute that resolution. And that's the question that you should always ask yourself, like, okay, what skill do I have that I'm not utilizing enough? I think that's a good resolution is something that you either undervalued or you under rewarded or something that you know you're capable of doing or you know you want to do and have as a goal, and then from there I'll try to achieve it. It's not some wild dream of something you've never done before. Of course you're setting up to fail, but it's even that is okay as long as you keep it as a resolution at least for 5 years, that you're every year saying like, okay, I tried this, okay, this didn't work, okay, I'm going to try this approach next year, and then you try it, but you continue on. It's not just a resolution and you stop in January 14th, you just stop and then you leave it for a year. No, you're gonna pick up the pieces. And that's also, people want something like, I'm gonna do it every day of the year, and then you do 2 weeks, and then in week three something hits and then it's completely done. Like I started off the year, I wanted to run the 5K at the Bigi Brochiwaka. I wanted to do it, but my wife got sick, and I was already planning to just walk with my children. I wasn't planning on running because where would my children be? And again, I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to be with my family more than actually run it. So, and then I started thinking like, okay, but what's the real goal? Is it to say like, hey, I can run a 5K, which I can, by the way. I can't run 5 kilometers straight. I've done it once because I had it as a goal. So like I had a 30-day challenge and I do think 2019 or something. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna run a 5 kilometers this month. And I called up one of my friends, Joey, and he was like, come run with me. And he runs 10
I,
kilometers
I
every day.
I want to go into that for a second.
Yeah,
You mentioned you did the 5K as a goal, as a 30-day
as
challenge.
just a 30-day challenge.
Yeah,
One of those
as a
30
30
goals was run a
was
5K.
5K.
Yeah.
So what's different in that type of goal versus a resolution?
A resolution is really something that it's more sustainable in a sense. It's like more part of your life. Like the goal was just do it and then you kind of
You have a
take
proof,
it
yeah.
off.
Like
But a
you
resolution
have a
should,
badge,
yeah, your resolution should serve maybe a little bit of a
a
bigger
larger
purpose.
purpose.
Yeah,
And I think that's where kind of most people fall flat is they put in goals, whereas as you mentioned, the resolution should be something, 5, 10 years along the line, as you said in the beginning,
yeah,
wanting to play with your son sports at 50 and
yeah.
kind of planning ahead for that. So that's kind of what I'm getting from you in that sense. And then you also mentioned, if you haven't checked out John Luke's blog yet, I'm gonna do a plug here
Oh
at
wow, oh wow, that's pretty cool. Thank you for doing that.
dot jeanluc.substack.com. That's JeanLucsr.substack.com. He posted a blog today. He hasn't promoted that one yet, but the one I'm highlighting is basically the
The
rise and
rise
fall of
and
New Year's
fall.
resolution. And you have a pretty photo there of the Biggie Brokiwaka where everyone is with this reflector shirts.
Yeah,
And I read through it a bit, you have to be realistic with your goals. So we already mentioned you need to make it something that means something to you. It should be more sustainable, more long term. How would you suggest, or what's your approach into making these goals more realistic, building up to that sustainability?
there are a lot of famous quotes on this one, and uh, for anyone living in Suriname, um, if you would drive to Republic, if you would go out of the city, like I'm talking 30 years ago, there would be a billboard by Johnny Walker, A Journey of 1,000 Miles. Starts with a single step. I don't know if you know that one, but it's a
Yeah, yeah,
very,
yeah.
very famous billboard. If you drive towards the airport, and yeah, it's the bad thing about it is that it's promoting alcohol, and everybody as a teenager, but everybody as a kid already also knew about that billboard because
Yeah,
it
but
kind of
that's
indicated
great
also where you
marketing.
were and
Yeah.
how much further your parents would have to drive until you finally out in the open and enjoying yourself. But I think that's one of the best anecdotes. It's like, hey, it's you have to take a lot of steps, and um, people get discouraged quite easily. And it's always like when you think like, hey, nothing can go wrong anymore. That's when like you start panicking and start looking around the corner because like, hey, it can't go this smoothly. And then if you start thinking that, you will get hit by something unexpected. Like for instance, not having internet in this day and age. Like it really hits hard. We had a SWOT analysis with our company for one of our interns, and we looked at the threats. And like one of the threats was like, hey, our company is fully based on internet products. So if
Yeah.
there's no internet, basically, technically speaking,
There's no work.
there's no work, which in this day and age is really crazy to think of that you would be in an environment or in a society where there's no internet. But you can get confronted by that. And then it's like, okay, so what do I do in such a situation? And often in these times, how you respond to the situation also kind of decides whether or not you're going to be able to pull through on your resolution. If you get knocked down 4 or 5 times, and you're like, nah, it's not fair. This went wrong. This isn't my fault. these people are doing this and I can't succeed, and you start searching for excuses, it's basically done. Your resolution is done. Um, so that's why it's important to be realistic as well. Because if you set your goals or your resolution too high, you're gonna get demotivated like really quickly because you have put a standard for yourself and you're not able to reach it, and it's gonna make you doubt yourself, and it's gonna have a negative impact, and you're just gonna start worrying. Whereas if you set up a small goal, like, hey, this is where I want to be in 2023, 2030. This is where I want to be in 2025. So I have to start with this. And it also makes clear, and I think James Clear really goes into this. You have to make clear for yourself. And there's a saying which I learned from during my previous employment from a coach, and the question was always, "How do you eat an elephant?" Are you familiar with that one?
No. How do you eat
Well,
an elephant?
yeah,
Enlighten us.
bite by bite. You can't. It's too big. You can't eat it all at once. You have to slowly bite off all the chunks. You can't achieve a miracle in 10 weeks time. The preparation towards it is it's much longer, unless you have not only accountability buddies but also partners that help you achieve that goal. And yes, you can get a lot done in 10 weeks, but you also want it to be sustainable, because that's another thing about New Year's resolution. And that's why I don't like the losing weight one, because
Hmm.
if you have lose weight as a New Year's resolution,
It's a target. It
it's a
isn't a
target,
change in your
and a
behavior.
couple of years from now, you can gain it all back. So if the resolution is different and it's a little bit more sustainable, and it's not just about losing the pounds, but
It's
also
about, yeah,
continuing that
it's
lifestyle,
framing
it's
it
different.
into a lifestyle, and then
Yeah.
the goal is just a supplement to reach that. It's a stepping stone towards that.
The gratification is higher though. I do want people to understand that the gratification for to working towards a goal is much higher than just a change in lifestyle. A change in lifestyle, people will come up to you. Like when it's already part of your system and you don't realize that didn't used to be like that beforehand, people will come up to you and say like, hey, it's amazing that you're doing this. I wish I had the courage. And you're like, wait, yeah, but this is part of who I am. Whereas with goal setting, it's like you're working, the gratification when you reach that goal is much higher, much
But that's
higher.
also a momentary snapshot, right? Because with
Yeah.
that same higher gratification, there's also a higher risk or a higher
No, but it comes with a
disappointment.
trophy. It kind of comes with a chip.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I did that. I can put it on the wall. I did that. There's pictures of it that I did that. Right. And then,
But isn't that serving your own vanity, though?
no, but for some people, for people's self-esteem, it's pretty good. It's like it helps people achieve things that they were not aware they are able to achieve. But you want to do it in a way that you can continuously hit these goals, or at least if you aren't able to hit the goals, that there's a consistent improvement or a consistency in it that serves a bigger purpose than just the goal. And I think that's a difficult one.
I can follow that a bit, but let's take a few steps back. We talked about, the gratification part, and we also talked about the disappointment part of it. Set the resolution too high, make the step too big, and you're setting up yourself for failure.
Yeah.
But also, you mentioned a very important thing. It's how you respond to those failures, how you respond to those knockdowns that eventually matters. Because you can set goals, you can make them small as possible, but in the end, there's external factors, there's internal factors that can kind of be an obstacle or a challenge in reaching that goal. So, what are responses or kind of common responses that people can default to use to help reset their mental state in kind of getting better responses towards these challenges.
The first thing is acceptance. So, like these are very cliche, but action speaks louder than words, right?
Yeah.
You can always go through the actions of last year. You can see, like, hey, I wanted to do this, but I did this instead. Why is that? And like when I was studying in Tilburg, one of the most hated subjects of the scientific module of our studies was evaluation.
I think it's the most hated or most annoying subject in a lot of courses.
Yeah,
There's
so
always that
evaluation,
evaluation,
I'm not sure if it
self
was
evaluation. That's
methods,
the
it's
word.
methods and techniques of research, methods and technique, and yeah, that's what it's called. Methods and techniques of research. I think it was C. People that went who studied the same study with me will correct me, but it was evaluation. And oh my god, like at the faculty of social studies, that was one of the hardest subjects to pass. It was insane. It was like people stopped their studies because of methods methods and in research. It was terrible. But um, if you look here in business, we rarely evaluate. We rarely look back and like, hey, this and this one, and as fast and the as the speed picks up in general in society, it's like evaluation is going to cost us too much time, so let's just continue working on the next year or the next one or the next. But that's where the information gets lost. So to translate that to your personal life, do you evaluate your year? Do you evaluate your month? Do you evaluate the week, the day? As in, like, really, like, okay, I wanted to do this, but I did this instead. Because, like I said, actions speak louder than words. So if you look at your actions, you're going to see, like, hey, I prefer doing this. And if you can figure out why, and if you can connect your resolution to why you prefer doing those things, that makes it so much easier. So much easier. So I think that's the most important step.
I have a handy tool or like default response that I've kind of learned from. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jocko Willink, the ex Navy SEAL. Also has a podcast. Kind of found him through Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss is one of the podcasts I listen a lot, and he has a default response whenever something challenging comes up, whenever there's kind of a down moment or something doesn't go his way. And you know what that default response is? And I think it's something we should think about and use more often. It's a 4-letter response. Any guesses? Hey, you didn't get that new job. Hey,
Yeah.
you failed the test.
N
Hey,
E
you couldn't
X
go on
T.
that trip.
NEXT.
The response is good.
Oh, I was like,
Oh,
next.
yeah, good. Good
Good.
that it
Okay.
happened. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good that I couldn't make that flight
Yeah.
because
Okay.
you never know what the next opportunity in your context is. You never
Oh,
know what
good.
it's good for. So
That's
if you
good.
frame yourself in that mindset, like, oh, it's great, it's good that this happened, you're setting yourself up for the next opportunity, the next uh, wave of challenge or anything that when you actually achieve that, you're gonna look back at the other thing. It's good that I didn't take that job because I now have a better thing going for me, and that's kind of a simple framing. And I do. I'm gonna be honest. I don't use it as often, but I do think about it sometimes. And whenever something happens, you think to yourself, good that I face this challenge because now when you're facing, a tough client, you have that experience. Good, well, good you didn't make that trip because a bigger opportunity waited like 1 month afterward. Because if you took that trip, you won't be able to take that opportunity afterwards. So that's a simple way
Yeah, I
of
think
doing it.
people will go much more towards another four-letter word, but I like it. Yeah, I do like it. I must say it's a really good way to approach things. And again, it's hard because you have goals, you want to achieve something. So I think for me with the blog that I wrote was that I have to be realistic that I have things that I want to do, but I've already have a set schedule. Like my year is already planned out, like completely. And so when new stuff comes up compared to the previous year, I'm gonna have to say no much more often, or maybe not saying no, but saying like, hey, this person might be able to help you, or hey, have you checked there, or even not being the one to respond. And today something happened which is really interesting. I am blocking some people on my email,
Like
and
straight
I'm
up
very
blocking,
rigorous with it. If
like that
you
they
if you send me cold emails, sales emails, without having any personal conversation, and you continuously do it, I will block you. And
I can respect that. I can definitely respect that.
that's really for me really hard to do. Like it's really hard to do. It's like I want to, like one of the things I really want to do is help people, but I'm starting to realize that I can better help them if they don't keep me from my focus. And I don't know if I spoke about this in my podcast, in any podcast before, but I was in a mastermind with Chris Ducker, and he pointed with two subtle kind of responses to things that I was saying or was thinking. He completely made me rethink like, hey, I know people expect certain things from me for free because I've done it in the past, but I also have to be respectful of my time and respectful of other people's time, because otherwise I make a commitment to you, but I cannot live up to the commitment. And that's even worse because I didn't have the
Yeah.
time in the beginning, but I didn't want to disappoint you, but I
And now
decided
you're
to,
gonna be
yeah,
disappointed anyways, and even worse
I'm
because you
going to
committed.
disappoint myself and I'm going to disappoint you because I set expectations that I would be able to help, and I wasn't. And that's probably the hardest thing for me right now.
Yeah. And I'd say that's to summarize, um, think about what really matters, set realistic goals, find a way to respond well to challenges. And I think you have one last thing to wrap up the resolution thing is don't give up. Make it a
Oh yeah.
longer term plan, make it sustainable, evaluate. And I think that's what we should do not only in January, but in several times in the year just to evaluate because you're doing it now and January 2025 shows up, then you're going to evaluate what you did in January 2024. And that's a big misstep and a missed opportunity for a lot of people, I think, because you're going to fall into the same trap usually again of 80-90% of the people that set New Year's resolutions. And by the third week of January, you fall flat again. So think about what
Wherever
your
you
goals
are,
are, what matters to you, but most importantly, don't give up, keep trying. That's what
wherever
it's
you
all
are
about.
in the world, wherever you are in the world, whatever month of the year it is, just make sure to think about what resolution you had and where you stand and what you were able to do. And if you let go of that resolution, make sure that if you value it enough to pick it up, no matter or not, whether or not you're in January or in March or any month of the year, don't give up, pick it up, And we'll be back with a new episode of Social Confoes next week. Same place, same time. Bye bye.